All right, guys, I can go ahead and start because it's 2 o'clock. I'm going to warn everyone at exactly 2:07. A bell's going to ring, so I'll take a brief pause because I am working from my classroom today. So I still teach during the day. I am here representing Gwinnett County Public Schools and my school, GSMST, the Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology, and some of the work that we're doing with the Department of Education in the arena of data sciences and analytics. So we are currently demoing a course and piloting a course here at GSMST, and I want to talk about what that experience has been like and what we've been working on. So first, to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got here in this classroom. I went to Indiana University to be an accountant. I took one accounting course and decided I hated it, and discovered this new area in the accounting school called computer information systems that I really gravitated towards. And I started teaching a course, I TA'd a course on Excel and Microsoft Access and the basics of creating and maintaining a database. From there, when I graduated, I went and worked as an auditor in the SAP arena at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And from there, I took a job at Hospira, which is now owned by Pfizer, as their lead IT auditor. So I was doing anything from validating if machines that were administering pain medication had the correct code to administer that medication correctly, to finding thieves, folks stealing from the company as well. From there, I became a CISA. I got my CISA. I became a certified auditor, and then I left to embark on a career at GE, where I became a data warehouse and reporting program manager. So I was the head of their programs there. I was twice awarded with the DWI. They used to call it a DWI, but no one wants to be awarded with that. So they added a T, which stands for the Data Warehouse Institute, for some analytics programs that I implemented at our rail and medical businesses. But I was also at the time volunteering at a homeless shelter called the Night Ministry. And what I was doing is I was tutoring students, and I was creating tutoring schedules and volunteer schedules, and essentially creating a database for their mission for about 8 years. And this inspired me to say, I don't really like working in an office. I really like working with students. So I left my job, I moved across the country to Georgia and went to UGA to get my MAT in mathematics, which led me to Gwinnett County Public Schools and GSMST and where I am today. So I started off as a math and computer science teacher, but the one thing that I had in common with all of these positions and moves was data. I was always working with data. I was always deeply involved in data. In my teaching job, we work with tons of data every day. And I know as leaders and administrators, you also work with data. So I was asking myself, for our sophomores that were taking CSA and ready to take more computer science classes, why didn't we have a CS class in data? So I also proposed why our students all need calculus. So the main math path for students is to take calculus, but we all know not everyone in every career needs calculus. In fact, Education Week just ran an article this year that while it's the pinnacle or peak of high school math, more of our careers are driven in the data science field and in data analytics. So why aren't we migrating and changing the way we look at math? Which I proposed to my principal and head of curriculum to add a few courses to our pathway so our students wouldn't bottom out and have no more courses to take their juniors and senior year after computer science A. So we proposed 2 courses, actually 3 courses at the time, one in linear algebra. So we have many high-end math students that have taken linear algebra in high school. So we proposed a applications course in programming using data using linear algebra, which we actually teach and was approved by the state. So that's a course that anyone in Georgia can teach. We also wanted to introduce 2 different data science and analytics type items, and I'll talk a little more about that down the line. So I mentioned the linear algebra. We have a 1 semester course that we offer that we modeled off of Brown and Mercer University. All right, and then we work together with a specifically a lot with Brian and many teams, business owners and teachers, to put together a data sciences 1 and 2. What we envisioned with that is that there are 2 roles in the area of data sciences that we can train our students. One being sort of between being a data analyst and a data engineer. So starting to learn some of the programming skills, but really focused on learning the key statistics and how to make information out of data. And the other being our programming heavy student, a data scientist 2, that really works on like data warehouse administration, diving deep into data science, machine learning, and engineering, and creating solutions. So we wanted to make those 2 courses so students could learn about these fields, they could learn key skills, and they could go into an arena that made the most sense for them, or even try both. And these work hand in hand. As from my experience in the business, I worked more on the data sciences 2 side, but I worked with business analysts that would be in our data scientist 1. Now, if we have time, I can go back and pull open the standards that we created for those. They actually went under review today, so I have to find out from Brian what the status of that was. But they are available if you're interested in those courses from the DOE for community review. So if you want to look through those and have comments and questions, just feel free to post those in the DOE review process as well, or contact me. All right, so everyone, no matter what course they're in, learns the idea of the workflow. We learn on the process of how do we capture data, how do we manage and clean it, how do we perform good analysis and turn that data into information, how do we write about that analysis and turn it over to our stakeholders, and how do we produce reporting solutions for our stakeholders. So we talk about these in all of our classes, and you'll see our standard. Our real focus is just how do we turn data into information, which leads us to make decisions in our lives, our businesses, in our careers. We then also evolve into what makes a person a data scientist. I'll give 1 second for the bell to ring. So we, in our Data 2 course, dive into machine learning, some of our analytical functions, and our mathematics and statistics study. We learn how to work with both structured and unstructured data, versus the data scientist 1 is probably going to work more with structured data. We're learning to code in SQL, we're learning to build databases, and then we're learning visualization and machine learning tools in Python, SAS, and R. I haven't, those are the main 3 that I've focused on. When I worked with SAS, but I am moving over to the R team in teaching that as well. So, and again, all of our students learn that the key to both of these classes is that learning how to look at data, visualize it, explain it, and create a narrative about what's happening to evoke change is what these classes are all about. So we pair the idea and thought of change with my students this semester, because they were really focused on things that were important to them and changes that they wanted to see in the world. We wanted to use things that were coming up in the news to inspire the kind of data we looked at and to inform our decisions. We wanted to ask a lot of questions about the world around us and see if what we were learning in class would help us discover or get some answers. I also work with an equity group in our county as well. I'm on an equity team, on the facility resources team, where we review policies with students just to make sure we are trying to get equity in all of our policies and procedures. One of the main things I worked on last year was helping our district find the components of putting in a real one-to-one policy, because we saw a great need for that with COVID, and a great need for support for all of our students to have devices at all times as part of our CS4All initiative. All right, so I'm going to talk about kind of some of the things we did in the course. I'll say the course is flexible. I seem to change what we do every year. I'm going to specifically talk more about some of the projects that we did this year. So our course started this year in the pain of Excel and macros, and coding using VBA, which for anyone that's an experienced coder knows that this is very painful and not a great solution. But we wanted our students to see that. And then I also saw that students didn't really know the functionality of Excel. So we went back and learned about functions and things like pivot tables and visualizations first within those tools. And then the first student project was I gave them data from my student teaching. And they had to perform different analysis based on the skill we're learning to find inequities in my own teaching. They actually found in different domains in my math teaching, the first year I taught, that there seemed to be inequities with female and male African-American students. So they brought that up and we talked about ways that I could maybe improve my teaching to speak to all of my different students. So we started with a local problem of talking about equity, which is something that they wanted to work through. From there, we went further. So the next project was to automate a project for a business or teacher. So one of the first projects we did was we automated a system for a equitable rating in our National Honor Society induction process. So we created a blind rating schema. We created a way to test if things seemed off, if one teacher said the student should be in the process, in the club, and one if they shouldn't be in the society. We looked at differentials and different ratings of the domain, and even brought in different raters and approvers if we thought it was unfair. So the idea was to automate the process, to make it blind, and also to look for potential inequities in the way that we were inducting folks into our NHS society. We also looked at regression analysis and found some things that we didn't like about the rating scale that we created in this process. So we made some suggestions on ways that we're going to change the process next year to make it a better system that better reflects students that should be inducted. From here, we left the world of spreadsheets, which we were all very happy about, and moved into the world of databases. So one of the first things they did was learn SQL, which is one of our programming languages. They proved that they knew it through solving a murder mystery, which was really fun. So they had to write SQL statements to figure out who done it based on clues. And also did some activities in places like SQL Zoo. So this was truly really fun because students learned at their own pace and I was there to support them. So it was really a differentiated classroom where students were using tools and resources to learn SQL on their own. We then moved into learning about and talking a lot about data integrity. And we spent a lot of time doing project work in integrity. I'll say I really don't have an idea for exactly the projects that I'm going to do. I let my students sort of drive their interests in what's going on in the world around us to drive the questions we're going to ask and the labs that we're going to do. So the first one we did was inspired by us just asking what is data quality. And we all listened to the American Scandal podcast on Enron. And I actually worked in auditing during the time of Enron. So they had a lot of questions about that for me. So we actually did a project where I created a database. I took some old knowledge of capturing thieves that were stealing from my company when I was an auditor. I created some fake thieves, 21 total. And they were on a mission to find as many as possible. So I didn't tell them how to look for things. I gave them some resources to use to look for common things in common issues with like invoice fraud and things like that. And they were actually able to figure out 14 of the 21 thieves within the system. So they got really excited every time they caught a thief. And then we had to write it up as we would in an audit report and present it to our manager. So that was fun. From there, they got really interested in the election. There was a lot that came out on the election in the past couple of years based on claims of voter suppression, claims of people that were voting more than once, claims of people that were voting in different states, et cetera. And then, of course, recently we've had the Stop the Steal protests and things like that. We listened to a few podcasts debating if voting records were fraudulent or not. And my students really wanted to dig in deeper. So we requested and pulled voter registration data. I can't share that with you because that includes some private data about voters. And we actually did a series of tests that they came up with to test do we think there's double voting? Is there a problem with voting data in our state? Do we think there were some of the issues that were claimed in the election? I'll say they overall did not think that voting was fraudulent this most recent voting season, but they did say there were many issues with the way that we capture data that are problematic. So the data needs to be cleaned up, and they made some suggestions for that, as well as they did note that they think there might be some suppression issues as well. So they looked at different areas and voting records and wrote up their conclusions with that. But that is kind of an ongoing thing. I have students that still come back and look at this data and perform different analysis or come up with different ways to look at the data. All right, from there, we were inspired by a crime podcast. We listen to a lot of podcasts to get ideas, and then we go hunt for data. So they were inspired about if the crime rate was truly falling, or if the way that we're measuring crime is causing us to report less crime. So they did some analysis and performed some studies. We didn't really get an answer here. We could not find some real good data to get an answer to see if crime rates were truly falling, but the data inspired some other looks at data. Some of our research provided some ways where we recreated studies. We recreated the study of looking at over time how many went to trial that were actually convicted in Georgia, and saw that conviction rates were going up, and looked at different time frames when that was happening. So that was really interesting too. But I'll say this is kind of an ongoing study. And again, I really let the students kind of drive what we're going to do, and then we hunt for data and see if it's possible to do. One of the things they really, really wanted to look at was they asked the question was, is the school to prison pipeline real? So that's been in the news a lot lately, and they wanted to interpret that data. We did learn about independence with that testing. We took discipline data from our school district and from the state, and did find that those variables were not independent, they were dependent. And then we wanted to dig further. This is one that we're ongoing. So we're currently working on building a time series where we're looking at different school districts. We're looking at their suspension rates, and then looking at their incarceration rates 2 to 4 years later to see if there is any trending information. We haven't found anything yet, but we're still digging. From here, we went into what it is we went from the analysis of already existing data and kind of loading data in to designing a database management system from the scratch. So working with creating solutions for businesses or folks. I won't go into what a DMBS is because you'll have to take the course. But our first project was to just build a database. So in order to make sure we didn't have any equity issues with COVID and students working from home this year, we actually used Raspberry Pi. So every student had a Raspberry Pi in which they built their own database on. So they built a MySQL database, and then they also added a PHP MyAdmin arena and started building their own diagrams and their own database based on data they sourced. So they essentially got to build any simple database that they wanted here. From here, it has inspired a lot of work, which I'm really excited about. So we have ongoing projects. Some of our students have taken them on as internships because all of our students perform 1.5 years of internships before graduation. So our summer STEM program at school, we have incoming freshmen come in to have an onboarding process, but we also capture a lot of data that we share with students and parents, as well as teachers and counselors as those students come in. So we have some students working on building a new database structure and way to auto grade for teachers that are working during that week while we do some teacher training as well. And then this one I am most excited about. We are starting to work through this and working on it over this summer. There are these ideas of pop-up kitchens or giving kitchens that are coming up all over Atlanta. I live in Athens. There's one right down the street from me. So the idea is sourcing food in a safe way for folks who need help, who are not food sufficient at the moment. It also provides some clean water and some resources to make that food. So here's an example of one. You'll see they built a little wooden box, and have different like water stations and things like that. The problem with these is people tend to donate things that aren't in need, are expired, or are truly unsafe for our population. So we're going to help build a website, and we're in the process of taking the specs for that to support giving kitchens in certain areas by understanding and publicizing their needs, having an authorization process, so having somebody within the neighborhood be able to go and check that it's safe and establish an inventory that needs to happen, and also coordinating some volunteering and fundraising efforts. So I'm really excited that my students chose this as a project that they're passionate about. It's something that's really going to help our communities and really focus on the safety of donating food and supplies to others. All right, from here, we went into data visualization tools. Now, you'll see there's a lot on there. I'll be honest, this is an area that I am still kind of working on and learning because I feel like it grows every day. So I made the mistake of allowing students to go in whatever direction they wanted to, if they wanted to use Python or R, which limited me in my abilities to help them as much. So I think in the future, I will pick one language or the other. But essentially, we took a lot of the models that we had created in other tools and started automating them and creating items that could be adjusted so that I could dive more into as well, which was fairly awesome. One of the projects we did, and this involved our dot product with vectors, is we compared Senate voting records. So we asked ourselves, are some of our senators extreme? Do they vote by similar to their party, or do they tend to be different from their party? And we used essentially a voting system where 1 was a yes, 0 was that they did not vote, and -1 was a no. So if they had different votes, we would get a result of a dot product of -1. If they had the same votes, we would get a 1 value. And then we sort of tabulated that across their votes. We looked at different types of votes. So we grouped votes by sort of the key issues and looked at senators as well, and then did write-ups on our blogs about analyzing Senate records. And we are about to embark in our machine learning lab, which I'm really excited about. So we're not going to get overly complicated, but their first lab in machine learning will actually be on analyzing breast cancer statistics using orthogonalization, and then also trying to predict if somebody has breast cancer early. So they're going to learn how we can use data to maybe inform the medical process or help doctors out while they're trying to diagnose in the field as well. All right, one of the other things that I love that my students do is every month we do a presentation on a minority, a woman, someone from the BIPOC community or the Latinx community that has been important to the study of data or even computer science. Their favorite so far that they really wanted me to highlight was Angela Benton. They really, really loved her. I think we talked about her last year in November. So when I asked students who I should highlight in their presentations, and these are actually some pictures from their presentations, this is the one that they said was their absolute favorite. So every month we have students present. They get to pick who they present on. So they find somebody that they find intriguing and inspiring, and then they present on them. What's really fun is they usually pick people that are still alive. So a lot of times I will send the presentations to that person, and sometimes they communicate or even have sessions with us to chat with us about the inspiration that they've brought into our classroom. They picked a few more that they also wanted to highlight, and they specifically asked me to dedicate this presentation to Katherine Johnson, who recently passed away. So I will honor that request. But these are some of the recent ones that we've talked about. We're about to go into our Latinx community for our next series of presentations too, which should be pretty exciting. And one of the quotes I actually pulled from their presentations, the student that presented on Chad Womack, I sort of wanted to end this brief overview of what I've been doing in this class with a quote from Barack Obama, that higher education cannot be a luxury reserved for a privileged few. It's an economic necessity for every family, and every family should be able to afford it. everyone in every career uses the art of data science. We use data to inform our decisions and make information. So we want it in high schools, and we want it to potentially replace a math course that students might not benefit from as much, as this will inform their career and influence their career in any way. I literally walk through how every facet of my career used the art of data science, and I happen to be a data nerd as well. But this is really a course that you can implement and influence any kind of student in your school. And you can really do some cross-curricular study and do some amazing work while you're learning these key skills and sets. And I'm really hoping that the next time I can talk or present that we have a database where you guys can start working with donating food to our Giving Kitchen, because that is one thing that we really are inspired to get done this summer. That's the end. I went really fast, I know, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute your mic or bring them up in the chat. I'd love to hear from you or hear your thoughts. If not, I will ramble more. I'm just kidding. I'd also love to hear if anyone else is doing data sciences or trying to implement those courses in their schools. That would be awesome to hear about, because I am always trying to network and get folks to work with me and work on lesson plans and things together too. So feel free to reach out. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I know there's another session on data for leaders as well, so feel free to check out and head over there if you have any questions too. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed the session. If you have questions, feel free to stick around. Hopefully the course got approved today, fingers crossed, and on to the next round, but we'll see. I should mention too that it's technically a math course. So we've pitched it as a math course. We're trying to see if it could potentially be a fourth-year credit math course as well, both of those courses. We did not send our voting findings to the Capitol. I guess we could. We've definitely written up and shared some thoughts on our blog. We kind of worship the 848 blog, like the guru of stats. So we oftentimes mimic that. And I have students create their own blogs, so they have portfolios that they can start. They can start joining. Or they can start having portfolios to show off to college, like process, the getting into college process. I don't know words right now. Hi, Joan. I have a background. I worked 10 years in, I'll quickly go through this slide. I worked 10 years in IT. I have a CS degree from Indiana University, and I started off in audit right after and during the Enron scandal. So I worked a lot in Sarbanes-Oxley and SAP and sort of the back end of data. From there, I transitioned as our lead IT auditor at a company called Hospira, and did anything from auditing medical equipment and the programs run on it to just analyzing data, looking for thieves or issues in our system. From there, I got CISA certified, and then I changed jobs and went to General Electric as a program manager in data warehousing and analytics and reporting. So I started in their rail services industry and their capital business, and essentially ran all of their reporting and some of their analytics and their Hyperion financial processes. I then moved to the medical services business, which was quite large, and I implemented a data warehouse reporting solution for them. So that was a lot of work. And then from there, I decided I wanted to get into teaching based on volunteer work I was doing at a homeless shelter. I went and got my MAT in mathematics. I spent a year at GSMST as a math teacher. I'm now in my 6th year of teaching, and I currently teach AP Computer Science A, data science and analytics, programming concepts of linear algebra, accelerated geometry, and accelerated pre-calculus. So I have a lot of courses I teach now, do math and computer science. Thank you for asking. Thanks. I do love a good data analysis project. So if you have any, always let us know, because we can always use more, because our students love working on real world solutions and taking on internships. All right, with that, I'm going to put my email address in the chat one more time. I'm going to be honest, I kind of want to go to some of the other sessions right now, if you guys don't mind. More than happy to stick around and share some things with you, but I would love to see some of the items on there's some other panels on data. So I kind of want to go see what's going on there, if that's okay with you guys. All right, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate you.